If you've been watching my channel for some amount of time, you'll know that I'm crazy about configuration. I configure a lot to the point that the around 4,000 commits I have in the past year, they're mostly to my configuration. It's an addiction, all things considered. It's not a hobby anymore, it feels like a job. So I really enjoy configuring stuff and making them act specifically how I want. So why would a person like me ever even consider a Neovim distro? For the most part, it's not really needed at all, except when you come to LSP configuration. So, what is even an LSP? An LSP is effectively a thingy that gives you language support, very simply oversimplified. So you have that. Then the formatters that format your code, the linters. A linter is this thing that screams at you like this. But LSPs can also do that. It depends. So that part, the part of giving yourself language support, that is like mind-numbingly, really annoyingly difficult in Neovim. Now, if you want a very simple setup, you can probably just throw shit at the wall until it sticks and it will mostly work. The issue comes when you're trying to actually configure something. Once you want to configure a language server, say Rust Analyzer for Rust, if you just use the default, yeah, it's pretty easy. But if you want to configure it to your liking, good luck. Genuinely good luck. It's like, holy shit. Same thing goes for formatters and linters. It will take you some time to figure out how the fuck you even do that. What a Neovim distro, and in my case specifically, AstroNvim lets me accomplish is doing all of that way easier. Let me first of all move chat here and do something along the lines of this. Yeah, it looks good. So, what's the benefit from using a distro? More specifically, Astro. Mostly the community packs. Let's go to community. How would we just look at all of the packs? Well, here they are. There are a lot of them. I'd probably be scrolling for a long time considering it's 583. It has a bunch of different packs. So what you can do in your configuration, in your personal configuration, you can just import a pack. And what is a pack? It is essentially a finished configuration of some plugins. You want Rust support? No worries, just import this pack. You don't even need to know what it fucking does. You just I want to work in this language. Okay, let me install the pack and not even worry about it. To show you why that may make sense to do, let's look at the actual pack of Rust that I have imported. Okay, that's easy enough. Oh, fuck, Jesus Christ. Oh, it still keeps going. See? Do you notice this? I would never write all of this for myself. I might for something else that I am interested in configuring, but when it comes to language support, I really could not be bothered. And with Astro, you get a choice. You get to choose for things that you want to have but don't want to configure, just get the community pack. But for things that you do want to configure, you can still get the community pack and then very easily continue configuring it. Some new questions arise because of how Astro works. So let's go to Astro and something like some plugin that you would probably have, auto pairs. You can see that we find two different things. Why? First of all, Astro has a built-in config in auto pairs. So Astro has some default plugins that it uses. And then a more, I think this is the built-in config. And it also adds a lazy spec for the plugin, like additionally. Then if you wanted to add your own configuration to auto pairs while still keeping the configuration that Astro does for you, it makes you have to think about more things. So it can be more difficult, especially if you don't quite understand how lazy works, to add stuff without overriding it. But once you figure it out, it actually becomes pretty easy. So let's go over some things in how lazy works. Because no matter how many times I've read the README, lazy is actually very confusing and explains itself very poorly. The common argument that I constantly hear, well, then you can make a PR to the README and get maybe rejected. Waste my effort and maybe rejected. I would rather complain on my channel. So, what do we have in lazy? We define a plugin and we can define the options to pass into the setup function of that plugin. There is also config, which from the sounds of the README sounds like it does the exact same thing and is very confusing, like what's the difference? And then you realize, so opts can be a table and config has to be a function. Oh, I see. Well, in that case, when I need a table, I'll just use opts, and when I need a function, I'll use config. That's also wrong. I mean, you could, and I did do it that way, but turns out that's incorrect usage. Imagine. I've only been able to figure it out by asking correct questions to the maintainer of Astro, by the way. His name is Mihalter, and he's like 70% of the reason I even switched. Dude is so nice, and like he overpowers my patience by hundreds of times. I'm like impressed how patient that guy is. So yeah, if you were ever to switch to Astro for yourself and join the Astro Neovim Discord, the #1 person who's most likely to help you is probably him, which is a really good look. If we go back and look at Kitty, which I am unfortunately using again, switched back from Alacrity, I might talk about it. I still don't recommend it, by the way. If we look at Kitty and the maintainer there, and how infamously like mean and kind of a person he is, it's night and day. So like a big selling point for me with Astro is that the maintainer is like a genuinely good guy. And if you have questions, either there is already docs explaining it. If you still don't understand them, there is a compassionate like guy with patience that will most likely help you. Isn't that amazing? Because without the help of the community, and well, mostly Mihalter once again, I would not have switched. Without help from other people, I don't think it's worth it. Because as we're going to continue, lazy is confusing, and in some parts, Astro is confusing because it's in some places expects you to already understand what it's doing to be able to change it. Let me pop a snooze. I don't know if that's like a word in English. So, what is opts? Let's start with opts and fully explore it, and then come to config. Opts can be a table. The benefit of this is that this table will get merged. Believe it or not, you don't have to have the entire configuration for, in this example, Neovim auto pairs in a single file, or it doesn't even need to be in a single return. I could define multiple specs of the same plugin. Genuinely, like I could go in, create another file. I won't, because like can't be bothered. And in that file, I do like the same thing, and I would be able to add another lazy spec for a plugin that I already have defined. That is not an error, that is expected behavior. That is something you can do. So the benefit of this is that the options that you define here, I don't remember what options AutoPair specifically has, but let's say, for example, mappings. Like, that's a common key that plugins tend to have. Let's just imagine it exists. It's an example that probably doesn't actually work. I'm trying to explain just the concept here. So I define a mapping for alt slash to, I don't know, CMD, like echo high, something of that sort, right? Boom, I defined my mapping. And then in this different lazy spec, I can say something like float options. It doesn't have float options, I'm pretty sure, but once again, just an example. Border is none, for example. And eventually, both these opts and these opts will get merged together. When you launch your Neovim, it will merge these options together and pass them all at once to Neovim auto pairs. And then you will have your mapping configured, and you will have your border configured. That is the huge benefit of tables. And this is how Astro Neovim itself and Astro Community packs work. They use the opts key to merge and basically add a bunch of configuration. And then all you have to do is just define your own configuration to override, or to add also, the configuration that you already have. So maybe you add a community pack for Neovim auto pairs, but you realize that, oh, it has this option that I want to change. Well, you just add it here, and that's it. You don't need to copy paste all the other stuff that auto pairs has in the community pack. You just define what you want to override. That's the very big power that you have. Opts merging. However, very important to know. Say there's an option. Let's create a new option that will make more semantic sense. Let's, for example, like default mappings, also a common thing, probably doesn't exist in auto pairs, once again. So default mappings, maybe Astro Neovim or a community pack or anything else, define some default mappings and you want to clear them. You want to remove them so you can set your own mappings, because maybe you don't like the default ones. You might immediately think, oh, I just set this to nil, and that's it. Or I override it with a table and like set my own mappings. Let's start with the table first. What the table will do, it will merge the same way as the opts table merges overall. What will happen is, say there is a mapping for Control E. Once you override it here, it will get overridden. However, maybe there's a default mapping in the Astro community pack for control Y. That mapping will stay because you didn't override it. If you overrode it, then it gets overridden. So basically, you merge to either override specific keys or to add to those keys, or rather, add more keys that didn't exist previously. So that happens instead of like, oh, now default mappings is only this. No, the other configurations default mappings will still be here, just get overridden by your additions. Okay, so maybe you just want to remove a mapping. Maybe you like most of the default mappings, you just specifically don't like control Y. And then you might think, oh, I just set it to nil. Wrong, unfortunately. Nil in Lua is not a value. You cannot set something to nil. Why? Because all variables are nil by default, in a sense. Nil means not defined. It doesn't exist. So when a variable does not exist, it is nil. How this works with table merging is that if you set something to nil, this basically wasn't defined. Even though you have it in your code, it doesn't exist in Lua's eyes. So what happens is that the default mapping for control Y will still exist. Often what you'll be able to do instead is say false, and this will work, but that depends. Depends on the plugin, depends on the configuration, so you can't exactly trust it. But oftentimes false will work. You can like try it, maybe it will work, maybe it doesn't. So we have figured out that nil doesn't really do anything effectively in table merging. So we cannot disable control Y specifically here, because we will assume that false doesn't work, because in some places it doesn't, and I want to show you a more full example of how you're supposed to do configuration. Okay, let's go to tree sitter, because I think it will have no, let's go to Mason. Yeah, let's ignore this for now and do this again. So in tree sitter we have, hello, can you help me with my autoclicker for Notepad? It's like actually a sillily common question for my channel, because like one of my most viewed video is unfortunately my autoclicker video. Just find it very funny. Like if you watch that video, you will clearly see how like hateful almost I am towards like autoclicker people. I made that video specifically to drive off people from the AutoHotkey Discord server so they wouldn't ask there. And now it's my fucking almost most viewed video. I played myself. And it's not like, oh, well, at least I get some money. No, I earn zero money on this channel, so I double played myself by making that video. I know, right? Fucking autoclicker people. Right, so ensure installed. This key is an array, basically meaning table that only has values, doesn't have keys and values. And what you might want to do is, oh, I want to install, like, to make sure a tree sitter for what? For Rossi, the config format for Rofi. You want to make sure that this is installed. And then maybe you have a bunch of other language packs that all of them also ensure install some tree sitter parsers, and you want to add Rossi on top of them. this will not do what you think it would. Instead of adding Rossi to ensure installed, you override the previous table with Rossi. So all of your community packs that maybe add Rust, then add Vim, add Vim script, add Lua, add whatever else, all of those are gone now. They will not be ensure installed. With tree sitters specifically, it's not that big of a deal because you will likely have auto install, but that's a whole different question. Effectively, when the value of a key is an array rather than a dictionary, so this is a dictionary because it has a key and a value. But when a key is an array, instead of adding stuff, it overrides stuff. So we have learned that nil is useless. It's kind of ridiculous to say that, like a language feature is useless, but for the simplification it makes sense. And when you want to add stuff to an array key, you can just put it like this. So how do you handle this? You can see here, I already do. You can use the function notation of the opts key. Rather than a table, you define a function. This passes the name of the plugin. You will never need this. You will, yeah, like low-key, you will never need this. So you can just use an underscore for this to ignore it, basically. And then opts is the opts table at this point. So rather than defining a table that will get merged with opts, you get access to the table itself, to the table of opts. And then you can modify it however you want, using any Lua features, which are almost non-existent, like as many as you want. So here, I use the ensure installed key directly from the opts table. And now I can insert into this table myself. Let's start by doing this in the default Lua way. We do table insert opts ensure installed, and we insert Rossi. So this is how you would do this. Now you correctly add Rossi to ensure installed. However, this is not recommended in Astro Neovim because if Rossi was already added to ensure installed, this will add it again. Unnecessary. Which is why Astro provides this neat little function, list insert unique. So first of all, you require Astro core, then list insert unique, you pass the table into which you want to insert, and then this is a table that will contain, or rather this is an array that you want to add. So I could add this, and I probably should, matter of fact, yeah, I definitely should. Kind of forgot to add it. Once again, because with tree sitter it doesn't matter as much, because most things will get auto added anyway. So all of this together will add an array into an array, but will only add values that are not already in the old array. So we'll only add unique values. And that returns a table. So we set ensure installed to the modified table that we did. Blammo. Now we have successfully added something to the table while still keeping all the previous things within it. And this is how you're supposed to do this, by using the function notation of opts whenever you need to add to an array table. Got it? Okay. Now let's go to the nil situation. How do we disable a mapping, for example? You also use the function notation. And we do this by opts, for example, mappings. And then I think it was this that I gave you as an example. And we set this to nil. Why does this work now? It works because like this is not getting merged with anything. We directly change values. Like for example, if we were to set this to a table, this table will override all the previous stuff that this table had, rather than merging with it. And this is why nil works now. Alright, now in your configuration, you have added all the array specific things, and you did all the nil things, and you also maybe overrode some tables with other tables. Okay, now to continue with your normal configuration. And now you're kind of fucked. Like, oh damn, I do enjoy, I like the table notation of opts. It's really neat, it's like convenient, and it looks better. But now what you'll have to do is opts, and like let's set every option, I don't know, do thing, and you're like true, opts do other thing, true, and you're like, well goddamn, well now I can't use the convenient syntax, that's pretty annoying. But actually you can still use the convenient syntax. We do require Astro core, and you'll see this a lot with Astro. Astro core has a lot of very convenient APIs that help you in your configuration and making it feel pretty nice. We do extend, and you can see it even provides me with an auto-completion. Because Astro does something amazing. It provides you auto-completions for like the Neovim Lua API for Neovim. Like for example, I can do vim function, and once it loads all of this, whoops, that's wrong. You can see it provides me, you want function. And then depending on its oh, now it works. It even provides you completions for, in this case, Vim functions. So if you ever want to like create something in Lua for your Neovim configuration, Astro Neovim will help you by providing completions for it, which is why it's like really good. So extend table. So first we provide the default table, the table that we want to extend. In this case, this is opts. We want to extend opts. And now this table is the one that will have extensions. So now you can normally do thing true, do other thing false. And this table will merge just like with the opts table notation, exactly the same. So you can do some specific changes that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise, and then come back to the more convenient format. One thing that is very important to know though is that opts here is not changed in place. So we have to return it out of this function. So first you do all the wacky specific changes that you can only use the function notation for, and then you return all the other stuff. Something that I do really often is do opts table here, and then local opts table, whoops, accidentally turned off my screen. I wonder if you could see that. So I define an opt stable at the top of my file and just put it here. So I could like have all of my options with only a single level of indentation rather than 4, which it would be in this case. And that's about it for how to change opts. Yeah, that's pretty much all the knowledge that you need to have to correctly change your configuration throughout Astro. However, we were somewhere. Yes, we were here. You can see that I use the opts in function notation. Now you can kind of understand what I'm doing here. I add something to an array. Oh, and important to note, this array might not exist at this point, which is why, if not this array, or if it's, maybe it's a dictionary, I don't remember. So if not this, meaning if this is null, then create it. And then I list insert unique. So sometimes you'll need to ensure some tables exist before you list insert unique them. Like, also pretty important. I'm very glad you asked. That is a program called ScreenKey. I'm pretty sure it's Linux only though. Funnily enough, it's part of the reason why I wanted to switch to Linux, because I found it so fucking cool. You can configure the font, bigness, where it stays, the transparency, how it displays the keys, all that stuff. It even has a GUI if you like that. So it's pretty neat. Yeah, so I do my specific changes here, and then I also extend table to get back the more neat notation here. So you'll be doing this, well, maybe not you specifically, maybe you won't, but I do this very often. However, you can see that I also specify a config function here. What's in the living and dying hell? Now, you never really need this. Basically, if you're thinking of using the config thingy, you're probably doing something wrong, and like reconsider. Linux is the only place you can really call home. For real, yeah, for sure. Especially with all of my various configuration of my system. I can make it like legit my home. While on Windows, it felt like I'm at work. You know, it said that it's not on Wayland. Is Arch with Hyperland. I see. That's a very common like combination. What's the state of Hyperland at this point, by the way? Because I heard it's like, it's good and it's getting better, but from my friend that tried out Hyperland, he was having a lot of issues. But then again, he's not as much of a config-brained person as I am. Maybe that's why. So, how is it there? Like, are there some features that you really want that aren't implemented yet? Something of that nature? So, still, config is used in some places, which is why I think it's important to explain it, so that you know what's happening. And I mean, first of all, I'm pretty sure, I'm almost certain, I could just move this here and delete this, and it would be equivalent. I do it this way simply because I thought it felt cool. It's not required. But effectively, what is even config? You build and you merge and you collect your opts whether it's by merging tables or by using the function notation. And then, at the end of it all, opts is a full table of all the options that were specified. When that gets collected, that opts table is passed into the config function. So, effectively, the opts key can appear very many times throughout many files for a single plugin, and it all gets collected. But config can only appear once, and every time it appears again, it overrides the previous config. It does not get merged. Depends, but it's getting better day by day. For example, a layer for bars was added to secret workspaces a few days ago. No clue what you're talking about. What is a layer for bars? And what are secret workspaces? Sounds really cool. Personally, I liked Hyperland, but I'm not sure if I'll stick with it. That was before using Sway, and Sway worked great for me. Hyperland got cool animation, but I always disable animation, so why keep it? I really enjoy the Hyperland animations. They look so good, like, oh my god. But then I think, oh, but I'll have to use Wayland to have them, and I'm like, well, damn. I really don't want to use Wayland yet. I tried Wayland some time ago. I had problems with it that were not worth it at all. And X has been working perfectly for me. Not a single issue with it. But X is often way uglier, unfortunately. If you're not using something like GNOME, KDE, and other desktop environments, and since I use Awesome Window Manager, I mean, yeah, it's ugly. There's no animations, basically. And it's overall genuinely uglier. But I don't have to use Wayland. And with Awesome Window Manager in specific, I have way more options for configuration since it's in Lua. I hate Lua, I despise Lua, but at least it's a well, I don't want to call it a programming language. It technically is, but I don't like it, and therefore it's not a programming language. So, config can only exist once, effectively. So what I'm doing here is I override all the possible previous config functions that may have existed. A very dangerous move. If something like Astro Neovim, or I don't think that ever happens, but possibly some Astro community pack defines its own config function, I would lose the code that runs there and maybe needs to run there and override it with my code, and I might miss some important stuff. So the best thing to do is to not override the config function ever. Hold on, I need to make chat a bit bigger. Secret workspace is a special workspace separate from other workspaces. I like to use it for music, socials, guides. Should not be at hand but close in general. That's interesting. For me, my issue are I never achieved to configure correctly my transition, my Hyperland timing style. It just look weird. Yeah, you can spend like a lot of time in trying to make something like animations perfect, and then you're like, still not quite there. Until recently you could not show any bar while in it. Oh, that's really strange. Huh. Well, I'm glad they fixed it. I'm the type of person to wait until something cooks. So I assume I'll wait until Hyperland is like more mature and I'll eventually switch to Wayland. Like, I'll probably have to. But then, like, I'll have to somehow reconfigure what I have here, a lot of which I'm pretty sure is impossible. Some things are most likely going to be either built in or easily doable, but some like very specific things that I have, like no clue. I call shell commands to get these widgets, and I parse the output and all that stuff, and I'm like scared, like, is that going to be possible in something like Hyperland? And like a week ago, added GIFs as backgrounds. Oh, nice. Oh, hell yeah. So if you do need to override the config function for whatever reason, for the plugins that are built into Astro, you have to call something like this. How do you figure this out? You go into the source code of AstroNvim, yeah, I know, and you look at AstroNvim plugins configs, and if it has a config for some plugin, you have to call require blah blah blah, and then plugin opts. Technically this should be this, right? Plugin opts like I do here, to make sure that the config function of AstroNvim is still called. And then after, we can do all the other stuff that you're doing here. Oh, I think I know. Wait. No, forget it. Good luck for the day you will transition to Wayland. It was weird for me to go from Polybar to Waybar. Well, I feel like if you already use a program that is like configured, that's going to be less of a big jump compared to every single plugin or every single widget that you see here I created myself, except this one and this one. Every single one of them is coded in Lua by me. I've spent a lot of effort on them. And well, as I said, a lot of them are going to be built in, but some require like specific code that I wrote to be able to be what they are, and I'm scared I'm not going to have those capabilities on like a configurable bar. I hope I'm wrong, but I might not be. What excellent window manager and bar are you using? AstroNvim and AstroNvim. Awesome window manager. It comes with its own thingy for making the bar. So you code it entirely in Lua. It's a lot of effort to the point of almost not being worth it, but it's like exactly for me. In terms of games and multi-monitor support, by the way, it's actually bearable, even with an old NVIDIA. Thankfully, I am on AMD, so I'm probably not going to have like driver issues. But then it is Linux after all. And it's like just kind of overall bad with video cards, it seems like, so maybe I will. And also, thankfully, I only use a single monitor, yes, while streaming. I'm a streamer with a single monitor, which is crazy. And I don't play games. My game is configuration. So I'm in a very lucky position to be able to switch to Wayland, probably easier than most people. Because like, games not supported, whatever, I don't play them anyway. Never got an issue with AMD GPU. Same, almost. The only exception is since I'm on Arch, for about a month, sleep was broken on my laptop. It just could not go to sleep. And if I tried to put it to sleep, everything would freeze, like the Wi-Fi would be correctly disabled, Bluetooth, all that stuff, but the screen would stay on and it would like continue doing the processor things for whatever it needed to do. And then about after a month, it got fixed magically. So Arch thingies, very, very classical. Still worth it though. may not be for the majority, but it influences progress. Yeah, for sure. I'm glad it's being worked on. That's definitely true. So I think I explained everything about the config function. So once again, you'll probably never need to touch this. And it's preferred that you don't. But so that you can understand the community packs, what they're doing, and the source code for AstroNvim, because you might need to sometimes go look at it, like, oh, what does Astro put in the default config for this plugin? You might want to understand what the config function is for. Personally, I solve sleep on my NixOS laptop with no sleep. Why would I sleep when you can just boot faster and start faster my dev workout? I really am not a fan of I also have my thing that creates all the windows that I want and puts them into the correct places, all that stuff. It's good. Still, it's time for programs to be opening up, and they take time. It's kind of annoying. And what I like to do is maybe I am in a complex problem that I'm trying to solve. I'll put my laptop to sleep and then maybe write out the problem on paper or walk around and think in quiet without my processor running. And then once I'm ready to try out a solution, I unsleep the laptop and continue on. I really enjoy that. And back when sleep wasn't working, I really missed it. So we have figured out how lazy works, and so opts gets merged, right? But there are other keys that get merged. All of them are opts, events, ft for file type, then cmd for command, dependencies, and there's one extra key that I'm forgetting right now. Did I mention keys? I think I did. So event, keys, file type, command, dependencies, and opts. I don't think I missed any of them, but I might have. So those are the lazy spec keys that get merged. Yeah. So for example, maybe in the default configuration for a plugin in AstroNvim, it adds event buff enter. This makes the plugin lazy load on buff enter. Now in your own configuration, maybe you want to add some options, but you want to keep the lazy loading on buff enter. You do not need to add it yourself. It's already there. Because things get merged, event buff enter will still exist even though you didn't specify it in your config. But maybe you want it to also load on Vim enter, for example. So you can specify it like this, and it will get merged. So eventually event will be Vim enter and buff enter. I'm pretty sure it works like this. Also, I just joined. Was the reason behind switching to Astro explained? Hold up, let me remember. Yes, it was. Yeah, I explained the reason. The TLDR is configuring LSPs in Neovim is a nightmare. But an extra nice thing is how do I... Oh, I can do it like this. So right now I'll do an action, and I'll get a notification. You probably expect something like here. It's going to pop out and I need to press enter to close it. Nope, I get a nice notification with a fucking animation. What the fuck, right? I did nothing. Not a single thing. I did not enter a single character in my configuration to add this. It's just there. The thing is, I would never care about it enough to actually go in and configure the plugin that does this thing. Genuinely, I don't really care that much. But because I use Astro, I just have it. There are a lot of features that you might not care about to configure yourself because it's effort for I don't really care. But you get those features for free without needing to configure them because they're already there, which is really fucking nice. Yeah, features for free because I want to configure and a bunch of things, like maybe my status line, for example. Still, I get some defaults thanks to specifically Astro, in this case, because I'm using hairline for my status line. Get some defaults and useful APIs to add to stuff, and I can build upon it. I have a bunch of default features that already give me a pretty damn good experience, and then I can add to it, rather than having to configure a bunch of bullshit that I genuinely don't really care about, you know? LSP-config is a nightmare. I feel you on that, like, completely. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, like, oh my god! Like, I wrote my own Lua code that scanned a Lua file of import to know which LSP-config Lua file I must load, and called the setup callback. Ask why I did that. It's just work. Yeah. Well, basically, with Astro, you have to think much less. You can focus on the configuration of things that you actually want to configure, and you can mostly forget about things that you don't care to configure and still have the features. That's the really nice thing about Astro. And because Astro Neovim is just 4 plugins, like literally, it doesn't require you to have some specific file structure, it doesn't introduce some distro config file, no such bullshit. It's literally just 4 plugins. It gives you a template that you can start from, and I think it makes sense to do that, to like have to bother less and trying to make your own organization. But like you don't have to. It's literally 4 plugins that you just configure. That's it. And you get Astro that way. So Astro, despite being a distribution, is like very configurable. Very configurable, and like it works better for someone like me than I expected. Way better. Because of, once again, things like list insert unique. That's not like a Neovim feature. It's like given to me by Astro, and extend table as well. Really, really nice APIs. Let's go to, I think, Mason. No, let's go to oil. You know what else I can do? Wait, does this even have options? Yes, it does. Okay. One incredible fucking thing that Astro has, which makes all the different specs consolidation much easier when you want to figure out what's like in the final full opt table. It's so good. It's so literally good. Enter what I'm entering right now, Astro Core. Plugin optsym, and you pass the name of the plugin. In this case, it's going to be oil-neovim. It's going to be called the same as the final part of the name of the plugin. And let's just press enter. Would you recommend Astro for a start from VS Code? Do you mean like, oh hey, hello, hell yeah. This is a mod on the Astro Discord server, and this person also has helped me quite a lot. Okay, so would recommend Astro for a start from VS Code. What do you mean by that? Like, do you want to use the VS Code plus? Oh, you're the admin. I thought you were just the mod. Oh, okay, I see. So do you want to use VS Code plus the Neovim extension plus Astro? Because I haven't tried that. I'm not sure if I can recommend it, but apparently even that is handled by Astro with its community packs. So if that's what you're trying to do, it is doable. Although I haven't had experience with it, so I cannot like recommend it. Or if you mean like, is it a good idea for me to switch from VS Code to Astro fully? Yeah, like absolutely. Astro takes great care in making defaults please the normies, I would say. Basically, like for example, the default register is linked to your system register, like system clipboard, which at first I disagreed with, but now I like. It has a file tree to the side. It uses NeoTree. It has like these things, like breadcrumbs, just like VS Code has. It even has tabs, like for your buffers, for your files. I really, really hate that, but I do understand it as like a design decision. So if you were to switch from VS Code to Astro, like, yeah, I would say that it's a pretty good switch. In terms of features, you will have features that you had in VS Code. And you will have some more features that you didn't have in VS Code. So I would recommend it, for sure. Ah, you had the idea for us community. That's an amazing idea. Astro is not made for me. I didn't use it personally, but for what I look, it's too much abstraction for me. Personally, I prefer LazyVim. In fact, I start from LazyVim. I see. Yeah, Astro can get very abstracted, and it took me, I think, 3 days to fully move my config. Now, keep in mind, my config was already like finished without Astro, so it took a lot of time to move all of that stuff and figure out the abstractions. But at this point, I enjoy the abstractions. They actually give me more power, I would say. Do you understand via motions? Maybe it's easier to start. Yeah, for sure. So if you're like completely new to Vim, you can try out the Vim extension for VS Code. Let me actually move chat like here. Boom. So yeah, the Vim extension, however, I recommend to use the Neovim extension instead. It provides you a bit more power. It's also faster and it's overall better. But if you really want to jump into like pure Neovim, because like objectively it is better, but also don't forget that it will take a lot more effort to configure than VS Code. So you might need to think around whether you want to do that. I don't necessarily recommend to jump from no Neovim at all into like full Neovim, even with Astro. Like it requires quite a lot of Neovim and Lua knowledge to be able to use Astro. Not gonna sugarcoat it. But one day I quit LazyVim since I discovered how it's working behind the scene and understand it was easy to do my own way. Alright, I'm comfy with Vim options, don't worry, I just want to start with Neovim, warning where to start. Yeah, well in that case, I can almost recommend trying to make your own config first and then switching to Astro, so you understand the inner workings of how everything works. However, you will bang your head against the wall and you'll want to scream and die. It is a terrible fucking experience. Neovim configuration is like, Jesus fucking Christ. It's horrendous. Which is why I can't in good faith recommend you to first try to make your own config and then switch to Astro, because it's a lot of effort. It will make you want to cry a lot. But then if you just immediately jump to Astro, it will be confusing because it builds a lot of abstractions on things that you won't understand at first. So I'm not sure really what to recommend here. Because we don't have much abstraction. That is false. You say that because you're so used to it. We're more aligned with the default key maps. That's why my Neovim today is a configuration powered with lazy, with some abomination like custom LSP definition for some language, own fork of some plugins, and a strange fusion between Nix and lazy. Yeah, that does sound like the experience of making your own configuration. Like a lot of custom hyper-specific things where it ends up being not really a system, but more so a mishmash of everything, which is why I prefer Astro, even though like I do mishmash a lot. But I find that Astro still gives me a better like system to contain all of this mishmashing. I am more than aware of advantages and drawbacks. Alright, good. Yeah, pretty much. And I switched and I've been happier since. I mean, still, like, it wouldn't be worth it if it wasn't for 1, Mihalter, 2, Astro community packs, and 3, built-in AstroNvim APIs, like plugin ops that I'm about to show you. Cannot be worse than trying to work with front back-end GS code, mixing modern and common GS. No clue how awful that is, but I assume it is very awful. It's like you say, it's better to do Linux from scratch, because then you learn more. Well, I mean, that's kinda true. I'm pretty sure like everyone that has done Linux from scratch says that, oh, it was a very good idea to do it because I learned a lot and now I understand Linux better, but now I still use a normal distro because like now I don't need to prove it to myself basically, and I can, yeah. So effectively, yes, it is better to first build your own config so you understand more, but what's better to use is, I would say, Astro. In fact, my Neovim configuration has become my own Neovim distribution. I don't know why, but in the end I always end up creating my own internal framework. Yeah, I can feel ya. Adding abstraction that makes sense for you. I do that a lot. Like, if you go through my entire dot files, my like overall system configuration, you'll see I depend on a lot of different abstractions, usually written in fish. So like I have my own system, which probably wouldn't work if you just like copy pasted the dot files. I assume it wouldn't just work, because like it's a web. Linux from scratch can be a good way to better understand how compilation work. Personally, I think Gentoo is better to understand how a modern Linux system work. I guess, like, I say I use Arch, that's kind of a lie, but also not really. I use an Arch derivative, EndeavourOS, so I've never really gone any depth in how Linux works on the lower level. and just use the distro that does everything for me. So can't speak on that. Maybe you're correct, who knows. Why Fish? Because it's amazing, and Fish Shell is actually my favorite programming language, despite me using and loving Rust. Yes, Fish Shell is so good that I like it more than Rust. Imagine Fish Shell is the perfect glue for my system configuration. I can use Fish Shell to connect a bunch of different programs together to define functionality that I can use. Like here, for example, this is like a pop-out terminal that I can execute shell commands for. How do I make it? Using Fish Shell and combining a bunch of programs together. Fish Shell is amazing. It's like bash scripting, but with more reasonable syntax, more built-in like STD library, kinda. Like Fish Shell by default can do more things than Lua. How in the living plus dying hell is that possible? Like Lua, like you would think like a programming language, a proper programming language, but it can do so much less and more difficult than Fish Shell can do by default. Of course, like, yeah, they're for different use cases, wildly different use cases, I understand, but Fish Shell is actually really fucking nice to use. So if you're like not sure about which shell you should be using, I super recommend Fish Shell. It's so good. Fish Shell is what got me into shell scripting, and now I feel good in the shell, and I constantly do stuff in the shell. I would not have done that if I was still on Bash or Z Shell. Gentoo Guide are so superior in terms of explanation of how a Linux work. We need to install. Oh, I see. Only thing better than perfection is a standard. Depends. Like, once again, when I do configuration, I would rather have perfection than standard. There's no shame to use the distro to make your life easy. I begin with a dead-based Arch distro, and then learn Arch, then go Gentoo, then return to the easy land of Fedora, then Nix for the Nix drug. I see. My journey was very short. I installed, like, in terms of on hardware, I used Linux on WSL back when I was on Windows. But my first hardware distro was Debian. I despised it. I hated it. Like, it's so bad. It's so bad. And then I switched to EndeavourOS, and I've been happy ever since. Sure, sometimes programs break because it's Arch. Meh, whatever. I don't really care. It's worth it. It's so worth it. And then listen, Fish Shell is so great. I'm always afraid of not having my good old bash syntax. Some transition can be hard, you see. Well, you see, I'm a trans person, so transition is like probably easier for me. I don't know, but I'm also autistic, so then transition is harder for me. So I'm not sure where I stand really. I really recommend at least trying out Fish Shell and trying to learn it. If you're like not good with immediate jumps, go through the docs, learn the Fish language bit by bit, how to use it, what it has. And at least for me, the docs were enough to get me really excited to actually switch to it because it's amazing. I read through the docs like, oh my god, this is built in? Oh my god, to change this, I just change a variable? Oh my god, this is like, it just works this way? That's so nice. Like, I explained in happiness while reading Fish Shell docs. And in my opinion, they were very much enough for me to want to switch. Rather than the stuff you need to do in Z Shell. Like, yippee! Okay, let's actually get to what I was trying to show you. So, you have this magic thing. Let me explain it. You call Lua code. You execute Lua code. Equal is syntax sugar for print vim inspect. It lets you look at a table, at a nested table in full complexity. And then you require Astro core to get the function plugin opts. Let's press enter. That's hilarious. That's really funny. Hold up. Ah, it uses a dot. My bad. Fun fact, you can press Ctrl F here to open it in a buffer to change it, and then press enter, and here you go. And now you have the entire opts table, and you can look at everything that is set. Speaking of random app break, Discord streaming on my setup requires a couple of relaunches and prayers to the old ones to work a couple of times. Yep, but it works. Very much Linux. Hey Amy! So, why is this useful? Because a plugin may have a bunch of opts keys that all get merged. You can use this to look at what the entire opts table is, except functions, I guess. Which is unfortunate, but maybe there's a way, I just don't know how. And this is really useful for making your initial configuration in Astro to understand what everything ends up being. So maybe you did some configuration for a plugin and something is wrong. You can go look at the plugin opts and you're like, aha, I see. So like, oh, I didn't override this mapping correctly or whatever. There is a higher level variant of this. Let's do Ctrl F. And I can just use my motions. It's so good. It says Alt F here, but that's because I remapped Alt F to mean Control F, because Control F is kind of to press. Get opts. Wait, no. Get plugin. I think, yeah. I think get plugin, press enter. And now you get the entire lazy spec for this plugin. You can like see everything that is here. You can see that, oh, it lazy loads on oil. Huh, didn't know that, because I don't specify it because it's specified in the community pack. Oh, it like blah blah blah. Lazy is false because I make it not lazy load because of a specific thing. Don't worry about it. And other stuff. So you can look at the entire lazy spec of a plugin. Let me try to remember. Ooh, yeah, something that is like really good. Now let me try to find it. Really, I don't use it a single time. Huh. Well, effectively, let's do Lua output. There is an abstraction called CMD that lets you call a shell command. Are you using the Rust pack? I am, yeah. I use the Rust pack, Lua pack, C# pack, JSON, YAML, TOML, probably something else also. You can call a shell command in specifically Bash. You can set it to execute in Fish, but I don't recommend it because apparently, according to Mihalter, it's like way slower. And also, plugins rely on Bash being set, so don't do it. Worst case scenario, you can literally just fish -c and then your fish thing if you wanted to. So you separate each token, each word, as its own string and separate them by commas. And all of this will be called as a shell command, and you get its output. If the shell command failed, output will be nil. So you can do if not output, then like for example, vim notify you got an error. But if output is true, you can use that output, the output of the shell command. You might say, well, hold up, isn't there a built-in way of calling shell commands? I don't believe it. Yes, there is. Let's do local output vim function system. That's a nice helper to the execute command. It's very nice, especially once I compare it to the default way of doing it. So the default way of doing it is system, vim function system. Let's do the same thing. Fish -c some command. And you need to surround it in quotes. Immediately you can see a difference. In the Astro Neovim approach, I just surrounded this entire command in a single set of quotes. But in system, I need to surround the entire command in quotes, and therefore everything within it I also need to quote. So there will be some more quote annoyances you'll have to deal with system that you won't need to deal with as much in the Astro approach. Alright, you might now assume, oh, output is nil if it failed. No, not exactly. So the Astro command is nice because output is only filled if the command succeeded. With system, output is the entire output regardless of what it is. What do I mean? Let's fail some command. What's a command that will definitely fail? I don't know, but basically there are two output streams. When a shell command executes, it can write either to stdout or stderr. It writes output that you expect into stdout, and output that explains errors into stderr. And usually those two streams are split in some way. Shells can split them and handle them. But with the default approach in Vim, output will be the entire output. It does not separate stdout and stderr. So you can't just say if not output, then, because if output is an error message, it will still be filled. Output will only be nil if there was no output, but you can't check if the command succeeded or not this way. What you have to do instead is do if vim v shell something. Let me check. Yeah, shell error. Shell error. If vim v shell error is not 0, then do. So shell error is the exit code of the last executed shell command. And if it's not 0, meaning if it failed, then blah blah blah. The thing about it is that this kind of ass and reminds me of AutoHotkey and its error level variable. This is effectively a global variable that you need to immediately check. If you do 2 calls, this will only contain the exit status of this command, and this is lost. You won't be able to check if it succeeded or failed. So this is a more ass way of handling it. Output is not split. You don't know which is stdout and which is stderr, so you have to use a global variable to check only the last executed shell command. And I am hoping this is impossible, but perhaps you execute this command and then asynchronously another command here happens and you don't even know about it, and it overrides the vim v shell error here. And while you wanted to check the exit status of this command, you instead check the exit status of this command, which is a disaster. Now, once again, I'm not sure if this is the case, if this is a problem that can happen. But see, I don't know, and neither do you, I'm pretty sure. With the approach of AstroNvim, you don't have to worry about it. It just works better. And you will see this a lot. Like AstroNvim has more APIs, more useful APIs like these that make common actions that you might want to do just easier and nicer to do. So I think this sells AstroNvim very, very well. I always hate language with shell command that don't use for real, indeed. Escaping space and quote are a thing that can make my head explode. Yeah, and especially, say you want some command, like some command that uses a variable. Say you do vim function get current working directory to get this, and then you want to use that current working directory and your command. Well, now what you have to do is, I'm not even sure what you have to do. Oh, you need to add another thing here, escape it, then this, and then you start another set, you close the inner quote, and then you close this quote. So you have to do this like quote bullshit here, while in the Astro core here what you would have to do is fish, fish dash c some command. So it's similar here for sure, but it's a bit less quote bullshit that you have to do here. You see? And fish-c is not a usual situation. Usually you can just split tokens one by one. So it's quite a bit nicer. That's a war crime. We live in Lua. Why can't we just return a simple table? Indeed, plus on God. Like, Jesus. I guess that what I mean with not much abstractions. Most functions that are added are actually useful. That's a better point, yeah. I do think, genuinely, like Astro is abstracted, and it takes time and effort to figure out these abstractions, especially if you're not already a Neovim wizard, and even if you are. But the fact that the abstractions that do come are actually useful and not like ridiculous, that I agree with. If you think what happens if Coda got a string with a quote, you also need to escape at nightmare. Fuck, I feel like if your current working directory contains a quote, you have a different problem. I'm pretty sure if you do local coda vim function get coda, and like for example, your current working directory contains a space, this will still be a single string, I'm pretty sure. And that's why I escape it, or rather why I surround it with quotes in my shell commands that I just showed you. Never have seen LunarVim, that's the abstraction devil. I'm glad I haven't. I guess I'm glad I was really strict with not trying out Neovim distros and came across Astro specifically. I can pretty easily say that AstroNvim is the distro for distro haters. Like, even if you are a distro hater, you have a much larger chance to actually like using Astro. It's genuinely that good. Yeah, I think that's most of what I wanted to talk about in terms of Astro. Yes, for current working directory, it's rare. I was more thinking about a code, for example, who need to pass an argument, the content of a string, in a buffer, and it happens in this buffer. There was some quote. Yeah, yeah, I guess, which is why the table approach is so much, like, cleaner. I generally don't like it because for some simple commands, like adding the extra syntax of all the quotes and commas is a bit annoying. Like I do this a lot in my X3 here and there, but when it comes to quotes, it is like much nicer. Let's talk about one of the default plugins of Astro Neovim, Astro Core. Astro contains a bunch of different configuration that you will definitely want to do as configuration to a single plugin. So all of the options that you set is just an options key in Astro Core, and you can see here I define all of my options here. Same thing comes for user commands. I have two commands defined here, where capital J is my thing for the norm command. So I can do this, like ASDF. It's the same thing as norm, because norm is a bit annoying to type in. See, I'm already like fucking up. And capital J is way less annoying. What is opt lang map? Sure, let me show it. Lang map makes characters from other layouts act as other characters. So I'm Russian, unfortunately, and that means I sometimes have to use Russian. Blech, I know. What I can do thanks to lang map is map the Russian keys to English keys so that they work. Let me press meta space, and you can see here that my layout is currently Rus for Russian. By default, now what I'm doing here will not work, and you can see actually that I am pressing Russian characters. But because of the lang map, I guess some things don't work, huh? But yeah, most things will now work even though I use a Russian layout. So if you use multiple layouts, you might want to use lang map. It's pretty neat. There's also an option for all the auto commands that you might want to create. I have a few that automatically set specific file types on patterns and like other stuff. So all of my auto commands that you want to create, I just put here in one singular place that contains like everything, rather than being split into like questionable places, which usually would be the case in a Neovim configuration. And also all of my mappings I do in Astro Core as well. I use the approach of using a bunch of tables and then merging them together. And then, Jesus, I have so much stuff. Nice, I'm French, so my character are always Latin. But that's still nice for some niche case like invert symbol and number row. Yeah, for sure. On Azure, you need to shift to type number. Oh, interesting. Have you shown what other Astro community specs you're using? We'll get to it. So I have a bunch of tables. By default, you don't need to split it into tables like this, but I don't want to define my mappings on like 4 levels of indentation. So I just move them out. And this is the syntax, effectively. You define the thing, like the remap, and then everything exactly like in Vim key map set. And you just define all of them. I don't have a very like good example because I'm doing this in a more complex way to allow me to put a single mapping into multiple modes. Generally, Astro Core will look a bit different than what I have here. Let me try to show you an example. So imagine this is the opts table key. It would do mappings, and then N stands for normal mode, and this will contain all of your mappings for normal mode, and then it continues on. Just a string if you want to map it into a string, and then important in brackets, function, etc, etc. So that's how it will usually work. Yeah, and unfortunately you cannot do something like, oh, n, like you can't do n and then terminal mode as well, or like n and visual mode, where this would go into both normal mode and visual mode. No, you have to do them separately. Like you have to do n and then also x, which is why I split it into tables and then merged them together. Yeah, you even add more abstraction. Yeah, I guess. True. I mean, genuinely speaking, I prefer this syntax. Like, because it just supports this thing, which I find to be just kind of better. So I don't have a good reason for why I'm even using the mappings in Astro Core. I guess for the sense of centrality. I don't know. I don't feel like moving it out now. I love how each Neovim user configuration are so different from each other, for sure. It's maybe a maze to understand what the other did, but it's our maze. Yeah, it's kind of neat. It's like so lovely. It's so ours. And even with the distro, you do make it yours, which I enjoy. You're not quite restricted by it. Imagine if half the amount of effort as you put into the config went into the modern software. Windows would maybe be bearable. I would not be fucking configuring Windows anymore. Fuck no. But it's true though, yeah. In general, we like our own code and think code of others is less good, but in truth, all code is a mess. Yeah, for sure. And code is also very opinionated. Yeah, unfortunately, YouTube blocks links by default and I cannot disable it. Code is very opinionated, so when you look at code of other people, you might think, how dare you make this design decision? It's so bad. And they might think the same thing about your code. It's pretty interesting. You think that code is like objective, but it's really not. It's like very, very subjective. So that's Astro Core. We also have Astro UI, which is a similar idea. It has highlights here, where you define all of your highlight definitions. I use the Groovebox material color scheme, which you also set here, but I change a lot of things about it. Like if you install Groovebox material, it will not look like it currently does for me. It will be a bit different. That is because I change a lot of different highlights to use different highlights. Yes, a lot. I still am scrolling. It also lets you define and change icons used throughout Astro. So you can change it in this one place, and every time this icon is used in Astro, it will be changed to your one. I will throw massive shade at this. This is incredibly confusing because there's no like list of all the icons. At least I haven't been able to find it. And in my opinion, it generally matters more how findable something is rather than whether it exists. If it exists but it's unfindable, it doesn't matter that it exists. So how did I figure out to change this, for example, or this? By looking at source code, which I think is just straight up bad that I have to do. So this is pretty ass. But yeah, like if you come across in source code some icon being changed, you would change it here. Similar thing comes to, let's ignore this. On this line, blammo. Similarly, in your status line, you can change what your separators are. By default, things are separated really largely by 2 spaces. I don't like that, so I changed it here. And you can also change the colors of a bunch of things used throughout Astro, which is even more difficult to find what it is. All of these that you see here, I guessed. I needed to guess these, because even when looking in source code, it is confusing to understand like what those are, because there's not even a list in source code of all of the things that are here. They're like concatenated as strings, and then you need to somehow figure out what those are to change them. So those are the 2 bad things that I'm actively like I guess hateful in Astro. Factorio code is possibly the best of modern games. It has built-in mod manager, and it's efficient as hell on its own, and supports Lua inside. For fuck's sake. Please, someone, please make a better language so Lua would not get used anymore. I hate Lua so much. And it saddens me just how often, like, it's used everywhere. It's used in Neovim. It's used in awesome window manager that I use. It's used in Roblox. It's used in, like, fucking everywhere. Which I guess, like, shows that, well, if it's used in so many places, it must be good. And people keep making the same argument to me that, well, for what Lua is made for, it is very good. Like, it's very embeddable, it's very small. Yeah, I don't care about that. I want my language to wipe my ass. I want my language to give me features that I can easily use. Not fucking... Whoops, wrong place. Not fucking table insert table index value. Why is this bullshit not table insert index value by default? I hate Lua so much. It's syntactically so bad. With how many closures are used in Lua, especially in configuration, why do I need to write out function every time? That is so long. Make it fun. Make it def. Make it anything. Fucking Rust has it fn. But Lua needs to write it out. It does not. Please make a better language, someone. Or I feel like I'm going to have to make it, and I don't want to. Sometime work rhyme in code are necessary, and myth. Yeah. Let me show you a work rhyme that I do in my configuration. Let's go to magazine. Let's fucking go. Let's start scrolling. We're currently at 23% of the file. Let's start scrolling. So we have shift, like specifically the left shift C. Now E. Now R. Now D. Now S. V. W. F. And now we're 73% of the file. Now, did I need to make this monstrosity? Well, technically I needed to. I could generate it with code, but it's so much easier to just generate it myself with Vim. There's kind of no reason for me to generate it with code. So I do this work rhyme, which I find really hilarious. If you want to show a more sane config, you can show mine as an example. You'll have to do that if somebody comes to the server to maybe switch to Astro. I am only going to show my experience, because I disagree with the idea that only reasonable configs need to be shown. I think to, like, when you show off something, you should show off not the perfect configuration, because a new user is not going to have a perfect configuration. They're going to have a kinda meh, bad, whack, whatever configuration, because they don't know any better yet. So I want to show what it's like from my perspective of someone who's not an expert either. Because you as the user are not going to be an expert too. Like, you're not going to be knowledgeable about all the things that you need to be knowledgeable about. And I want to show you this experience as it's probably going to be for you, not as it's already perfect for the people who know what they're doing. Sansi is for Debian and Windows users. Is that even true? I hated Debian. Do we not have autocomplete in Astro UI? Nope. At least it doesn't work for me. So I do indeed say type Astro UI opts. I do have it. And as you can see, nope, you do not. You see all the other stuff, but I don't get autocompletions for the symbols, and I'll like scroll through to, I guess, prove it. And as far as I can see, yeah, there's like no autocompletions for the colors here, straight up. Hello. It took a long time for me to reply to you, I'm sorry. I mean, it is, but every new user is also going to have a skill issue. I think it's more important to show off a more realistic configuration than to show a perfect configuration, because you're not going to have a perfect configuration. Some people are writing Lua code in Funnel. Maybe you would like that? Yeah, perhaps. I've been recommended Funnel a couple of times, but I haven't discovered it yet. Maybe I will in the future, and I probably will. That might fix my hatred towards Lua, because I won't have to write it in Lua. Just haven't gotten around to it. I was relating to Lua bad. Oh, yeah. Well, that's true also. Like, let's take Rust for example. It requires me to put in a lot more effort to achieve what would be like easier in a different language. Yet I don't mind that. Even though more skill is required for Rust, I don't mind that. Matter of fact, I enjoy it. That is because still, the tools that are given to you in Rust are like, they're given to you. You can do stuff. You need to have more skill to be able to like do this stuff, but you have the tools. Lua is the opposite. It does not have the tools, even though it's simpler. You have to reinvent a bunch of wheels to get something that would be easier in a normal programming language, and I despise that. There's also the Astro plugin called AstroNvim, which I don't have because I obviously use a different theme. So I can't say much about it. You probably also have a favorite theme that you're also going to use instead of AstroNvim. So like, yeah. Oh, there's also Astro LSP, which is for configuring your LSPs and all stuff related to it. It basically takes a bunch of stuff like Mason, LSP config, Mason, LSP config, and all that bullshit that is spread across many plugins, and kind of puts it all together for you to be able to more easily configure stuff. Like for example, here I configure Rust Analyzer, But this actually does give you auto-completions. If I start adding more stuff and ask for auto-completions, you can see here that everything that I need to set, except this, I guess. Except this, I guess. I would need to figure out it somehow. But then, once I passed the correct key, it would give me the thing, most likely. Yeah, so basically you get auto-completions for configuring your language servers, which you don't have in default Neovim. You have to configure it to work this way in there, and I tried to. It was really difficult, could not figure it out. Astro just comes with it by default, so you won't have to worry about it, and this is like very, very nice. Some people, okay, no new messages, got it. What else do we have? Yeah, I guess when it comes to Astro specific, that is like most of the stuff that I wanted to cover. And everything else you can find and read about in the documentation. Fun fact, if you want to try out Astro and you're not quite sure yet if you want to switch, you don't have to do the atomic bomb of an action to like immediately switch to it at once and like move your entire config. You don't have to do something as extreme as that. There's something called Neovim app name. This is an environment variable that you can use to have multiple Neovim configs. How does it work? Your usual Neovim is just going to be your default config. But if you do Neovim app name and then some other string, Astro for example, and then you call Neovim like this, you will call a different config, which is called Astro. This is explained in the documentation. Just a fucking map of the world, that's hilarious. What am I trying to search for? Astro, I guess just Astro docs. And somewhere in here it explains how to do this, how to have multiple configs. Maybe this will work. Neovim app name. Huh. It does. So here, I don't think, oh, I do. Oh, wow. I do have like the cool link. Boom. So this lets you have a separate config for Astro and work on it bit by bit while still being able to use your previous Neovim config. So you don't have to break your current config to switch to Astro. You can literally just try out Astro and it will be completely separate. And then once, or if you're ready to switch to Astro, you can just move over all the stuff. It is also explained in the documentation on how to do that. So this is like really big, and it's like the entire reason I even considered switching to Astro, because I could make the transition painless. It's really nice. Yeah, I think that's it when it comes to Astro. True. I mean, mostly Mihalter. Let's not kid ourselves. If it wasn't for Mihalter, it would not be lovely. Yeah, it would not be a lovely Discord without Mihalter. He balances the scales like way differently. You and another guy are meanies. You're mean. And if it like, yeah, if it wasn't for Mihalter, it would not be like a very welcoming Discord. Right, okay, so there's a common thing that you might want to do in Neovim. Say select some lines and I want to execute the normal command on them. So what I want to do here is add... how do I show this in like a reasonable way? Okay, well, let's say I want to add quotes here, and also at the end. And also want to add commas at the end to turn these keys into like strings in a table, for example. So if you have the surround plugin, this is pretty easy. You do YSS this and then capital A, comma. As you can see, I did not lie. And the syntax highlighting is like fucking over because you're not supposed to actually do that. But let's say you don't have the surround plugin, and how would you do this action like by default? Well, first you insert at the start of the line and enter a double quote. But now you're fucked. If you try to do capital A, double quote, comma, it just gets added in as literal text because you execute a singular normal command, and once you enter insert mode, you can't escape. You cannot do this and, for example, escape, because that's still literal text. So what you might do instead is first do this and then GV and execute another norm command. But you have to do this in 2 actions, and that's kind of ass and may take a longer time. It's a bit more annoying. The thing is, you don't actually have to split it in 2. There's a trick that I recently learned. First of all, let's enter insert mode, and what do we do here? What do we do now? Some magic. We can insert the literal escape character to go back to normal mode and continue on. We can press Ctrl Q and then escape. And I just inserted the escape character, the literal escape character. And now I can continue on. Capital A, double quote, and comma. This didn't work previously. Previously, it just inserted it as literal text. But now it works, because using that literal escape character, I was able to escape into normal mode and continue on, which is like really cool. And now when I undo, it's a single action too, which is extra nice. So actually, now that I think about it, I can do norm, I do this, escape, and now I just can press dot, I believe. Okay, no, you can't dot repeat it. That's unfortunate, but that's still pretty damn good. So this escape thing, it doesn't spread only to escape. You can use Ctrl Q and then press some special key to insert it as a literal key. So for example, I can do Ctrl Q, enter, and that will insert the enter character. Which would do this, I guess. Why? Because it inserted here, quote, and it pressed enter here. That's why this happened, which is quite interesting. So you can use Ctrl Q anywhere, by the way, either in insert mode, like as in normal insert mode, like here I can press escape, works here as well, or in command mode here, Ctrl Q, and then any character, any special character, to insert it literally. And this is like incredibly useful. This almost makes macros useless, somewhat, because you can now record something more complex. Norm, let's repeat it, then we add this, and then I do J, and see, it jumped here. So I'm effectively using a macro right now. Now all I need to do is make something that will re-execute my previous command, like this. I'll probably make a hotkey specifically for it in the future, and boom, now I won't need macros, kinda. So yeah, I find this really, really cool. And the final thing that whoops, no, not that, this. The final thing that I want to talk about on this stream is a program that I recently discovered. However, it's a very old program called HTT-Rack. Find the name very hilarious because it's very close to being HRT-Rack, which I find funny. So HTT-Rack, or HT-Track probably is meant to be, lets you download an entire website, and it is recursive, so it will follow all the links that a website has and download those as well. But it will not go to other domains unless you specifically specify it with this option, I believe, or this option. Yeah, so you can download entire websites. Let me open a new something. Oh, let me show you my address bar so you can see what's in there. And let me open Fish. You can see that I opened my local installation of the entire Fish docs, and that is why it loaded so quickly, because I didn't need internet to load this. It was immediate. And once I go follow links, I still keep being on the local, like, installation, you could say, of the docs. And loading everything is instant because it doesn't need internet. It's just saved locally. And I have everything that I need. If I disable internet, first of all, my stream will break. But if I did that, I would still have access to all of this documentation offline locally, which I find to be really, really cool. So let's go to docs, and that is where I contain all of my stuff. How do you download a new thing? You make a directory, thing. So if you go back, we now have thing here. Let's go back to thing. We're now in thing. It has nothing. We do HTT-Rack, and then you paste a link of a website that you want to entirely download. If, for example, you don't want to download this entire doc, or maybe only like subdomain, you can also do that, and it will not go up. And you wait for a bit for it to download. And once it downloads, let's go to something like Kitty, for example. It will contain a bunch of stuff, and importantly, index.html, which you can, like Vivaldi, my browser is Vivaldi, or browser index.html to just open it here. And you can see it is also my local installation. So that's how you would open it. And I have my own specific like opener abstraction with Rofi, as I've shown you here. So you can do fish arc parse and jump directly to here. Once again, it is local. Hi! Haven't seen you in a while. I guess because I haven't streamed in a while too. Must have been like a month or something. At least 2 weeks. yeah, so this is amazing. This is most useful for things like docs that you might want to download for offline. It's like really, really nice. I have the docs for my window manager, for Kitty, for fish, as I've shown you. And they don't take much in terms of space. Let's do du-sh. So the entire Kitty docs only take 16 megabytes. Let's go to fish. Why is it not writable? That's really strange. Huh. Right, let's check it. It's just 4 megabytes. Oh, it's not writable because it's a symlink, of course. Because actually, with fish specifically, you already have the website downloaded by default when you install fish. You don't need HTTP for it. Let me do LA, I think? No, LG. You can see this is the path that already contains the pre-downloaded fish docs. It's just a bad example. I have Astro docs downloaded as well. It's just 5 megabytes. So when it comes to docs, it's really not big in terms of space to be able to download them, which is really nice. And you remove all of the waiting times for loading stuff. It's instant and it's available offline. You might then think, oh, well, maybe I would be able to download some manga. And I've tried doing that. I tried downloading the entire Baki manga. Could not work. Like, it could not download the images for some reason on 2 different websites that I've tried. I don't use Neovim anymore, actually. I don't remember if I've talked about it on stream before. I think I have. On like something like previous stream or the one before. So yeah, unfortunately I don't use it. I think it is good, but not good enough for my laptop, I guess. So yeah, for some more complex websites that require JavaScript to dynamically load images, or images that like only appear because of a request to a server, all that like more complex bullshit might not work with HTTP, but something simple like documentation or some more like simple web pages, it's amazing at. There's also Monolith, which is a similar idea, but it uses way simpler options that let you define its behavior, and it's like overall I would say better, but it is made specifically to target a single page. It is not recursive. There's also wget, which I haven't discovered and understood yet, so maybe wget is better than HTTP. There are more things, but I don't know what those are. I use LazyVim, it's alright. That's the only thing I've heard about it, that it's alright at best. It's made by the creator of lazy.neovim, so like the plugin manager, so that says something, but I don't know, I haven't tried any other distro besides Astro, and I don't feel like I need to. The VS Code to Kitty to Neovim to Alacrity to like Kitty pipeline is real. I don't think it is. I might be the first person to do it. To go from VS Code to Kitty to Neovim to Alacrity to Kitty specifically. It is very specific. Alrighty. Let me think whether I'll show you another thing or not. Trying to measure my energy levels. I remember there is a Neovim app name that you can set up in your Z Shell RC. I have multiple Neovim distros. Yep, I have already mentioned it existing. Yeah, it's very good. It's just that I can't be bothered to even try. There is so much configuration and other stuff that I want to do. What else do I have? Oh, that. I have so much stuff to do, I really couldn't care about something that I didn't even care about earlier. There's a lot of stuff that I have yet to get to. It kind of stays almost infinitely because I always have some things to do. So I'm like very selective. I changed up my mouse mode recently. It used to give me 45 points that I had hotkeys to instantly jump to, but I found that, first of all, I don't like pressing modifiers, and second of all, 45 is way too much. The good benefit is that it's a very high skill ceiling. So in theory, if I get really good at those 45 points, I'll be much faster, but I just wasn't getting any better at it. I guess I would need to actively put in the effort to practice, which I just didn't do. So I decided to go with a different design that is based on relativity. We still have points, but only 5 of them. 1 for the center, and 4 other ones for the corners. And from here, you'll have to press modifiers with home row mods. I've actually tried that out, but I found that at least with X remap, it's not immediate enough where, like, I press a key and then immediately another key way too often. I like basically press multiple keys at once, almost, where splitting them like more abruptly was really hard to get used to. I really like the idea of home row modifiers, but it's way too difficult to get used to. Maybe in some other remap manager other than X remap it would be better, but I don't know. Maybe it's just not for me. Maybe it's just way too much effort. Right, so HJKL still move me directionally, but only by a single pixel. Need to adjust the delay. Even with the delay like adjusted, still, like I generally press 2 keys at once, and because of how they're intercepted, they like are printed correctly. But with home row modifiers, that is no longer the case, so it's like difficult. Now, instead of modifiers, I use prefixes. A lets me do a singular move of, I think, 13 pixels. Now, what I also have is the ability to go sideways. AA goes up left, AS is down left, AD is down right, AF is up right. Then S lets me move a bit bigger, 26 I think. SS, SD, SF, SA, D is 52, so D in directions, DS, dd, df, and f is even bigger. It's like 104. ff, fs, fd, fa. So that's what I'm trying out. Being a bit more based on relativity, and the difference between the jumps is a bit bigger than I used to have before. Yeah, they multiply by 3 actually, rather than by 2 that I just told you about. It's mathematically calculated using your top and average CPM. Oh wow. Yeah, I didn't do that. Have a great day too. Bye bye. So the difference between each of the jumps is by 3. The benefit that I get from this is that I have to think less which prefix to use because they're so much more different. And then if something is incorrect, I can just press something twice effectively. So in other words, I will get used to the different distances of each modifier way quicker because they're more different. So yeah, I'm trying out this approach. I'll tell you whether it's a good approach or not in some future, but so far I at least like it more. I feel like I have to think a bit less with it than I needed to with my points approach, because the differences are a bit bigger. Still, it's something that I need to get used to. Yeah. Impressive that you're streaming off a laptop. Does it run hot? No, not actually at all. If I touch it, it's like, it's barely warm, if even. It's just that my laptop is like fairly solid. Let's do high fetch. By the way, high fetch is literally just neo-fetch, but trans or gay or bisexual or asexual and so on and so forth. It's really nice. Here are my specs. It's kind of a good laptop. It's pretty solid. So that's why. And also I stream at 30 FPS. I cannot handle 60, so I do 30. It makes for a worse viewing experience for sure, but at least I can. Also some other configuration in OBS and on the YouTube side. Yeah, so I hope that this new mouse mode approach I'm going to like more. Like, I feel like I can get to places a bit more easily because I don't have to think about, oh, which point do I need to do? Like in the past, I would maybe want to get to this point and I'm like, okay, how do I get to this? Okay, so here are the 4 different points, main points that would be here. I need to press Q and then Alt Q to get here. And it's like a whole mental process compared to first getting to some more or less place and then just fixing that place. And I got here like kind of quicker. So I wonder how good this is going to be. And I still have the ability to click with left, right, and middle buttons. I have the option to hold them down. I have the option to hold down modifiers, so I could do something like hold down shift. Oh, hold down shift. Then hold down like click, and then do this, for example. Hold up, click, hold up, shift. I won't really want to do this often, but in theory I can. Wait, why is it? I thought it is not releasing my click for some reason. I don't remember why. Yeah, but that's it. That's all I wanted to show you today. I hope you enjoyed the content. I hope you learned something. And maybe you're going to check out Astro, because thanks to Neovim app name, it's like, I won't say painless, but in terms of breaking your current config, it is free. So if you're looking for something better than having to deal with all the bullshit that Neovim configuration can be, try out Astro. I genuinely recommend it, even as an insane configurator that I am. Bye bye!